excited about this coming season, and like always, there's stuff to work on and get better at. It's just the life of an NFL coach and player.
How has it been for the last couple of years, knowing like you guys have kind of had a revolving door at right tackle, and you're pretty much headed in that direction with Jonah probably going to be a free agent? How do you feel about having to reassess that position every year? What have you learned, and how do you feel about going into that situation again this year again?
I mean, it's not ideal, obviously. You'd love to have had a guy that you can plug in 2 or 3 years ago that you knew was going to be there for the next 10 years, but that's, again, part of the business, part of the league. It's something that if you sign an older guy, you're hoping to find a young guy to step up and develop as well. So I think we're looking at all those options, and we'll see where this league offseason takes us.
How hard is it to get a plug-and-play rookie at a tackle spot starting right away, regardless of where you pick him, even if it is early?
Yeah, I think it's hard regardless of his position. I mean, it's just in the NFL, it's an adjustment. Obviously you get a guy somewhere in the top 10, you're hoping it's going to be a lot smoother transition, but I've heard debates say after the 12th pick of the draft, I mean, what's the difference between 13 and 32? It's kind of that demarcation line, if you will, of guys who are, have a more smoother transition regards to position. But yeah, no, it's not a walk in the park for sure.
Have you ever had a rookie tackle on opening day?
Dwayne Brown, when I was in Houston years ago, comes to mind. Rookie tackles.
Yeah, was Becton or rookie?
Becton. Yep.
He started the opener.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I guess
it just doesn't happen a lot, though, right? I mean, it just doesn't.
You guys would probably know more than me. You guys seem to be all over those types of stats. That's nothing I study. So, but no, it's not impossible, but it's not easy. It's everything else we do in this business. So,
is the challenge more physical or mental for those rookies to step in? And
all the above. I mean, the game's faster. The opponents they're going against are a lot more technically sound and faster. They're stronger. The game's more complex. The pressures that they'll see is more complex. The volume from a playbook standpoint is more complex. It's a little bit of a difference.
What are some of the attributes that you like having in a tackle position as opposed to maybe somebody who plays on the interior? What are some measurables that enable them to be successful?
Well, if they're going to be on the edge, it's going to start with their feet. They got to have range, got to have very quick feet. Length helps. Length will help you overcome some of your deficiencies in your feet, your athleticism. Balance is a big one. Being able to bend is a big one. Out there on the edge in space, you're going to face the cream of the crop as far as what this league has to offer. Left side, right side is irrelevant these days. I'm sure all the guys that faced the Watt kid in Pittsburgh, think that they're facing the elite just as much as everyone faces the other guy in Cleveland on the left side. So either side's going to be important. It's not like what it used to be back in the day. Left side is kind of the premier, and it's not that way anymore.
I'm not saying this is going to happen, but in a perfect world, are you able to add a proven veteran in free agency to potentially be there, and then also add in the draft?
That's a great question for Duke. I mean, add a veteran in free agency. That's not my deal. So it'd be great, but that's not my role. That's probably a good question for Duke.
How much of a role do you have when you guys bring free agents in and they're talking to them? They come in on a visit, and if it's a tackle, whatever it is.
Yeah, they'll ask my opinion and give my 2 cents worth, or we'll stack and grade guys. Here's a group of guys to grade and tell us where you rank them, and that kind of stuff for feedback, and then they'll make their decision.
But do you talk to the free agent? Do you when he comes in on a visit?
Yeah.
So how tricky is that to maybe sell a guy where, hey, we want to sign you, but we also might draft your replacement a month later?
The word tricky is I mean, that's the business. I mean, guys who've been in the league long enough know it's just the way free agency comes first, the draft comes second. I mean, I will say this: players these days are not clueless. They're smart. They've been educated on the business. So that's, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and they're, you know, all the guys usually want to have chances to compete. So whether that's with a veteran or a rookie or somewhere in between. So, but no, I don't think that's anything tricky. I mean, players want you to be honest with them, and it's, if it makes dollars and cents for them and they have a chance to compete, then, and you're honest with those guys, I mean, that's all you can do and all you can be.
Have you started stacking those free agents?
What's that?
Have you started stacking those free agents or not yet?
Yeah, I've graded a few guys and put them in order. I'm not going to list or rank any of them, but
Sure.
yeah, we started that process.
Are there traits that they have in common that when you look at guys that you really feel like fit y'all scheme really well, and what you like out of offensive linemen, are the things that they have in common?
At a specific position or just in generally speaking?
Generally speaking. I don't know how you
I mean, generally speaking, good traits for all positions on the line are going to be kind of across the board. So it's not like we're looking for something unique in that regards. I mean, you want someone who's tough, line one, mentally tough, more importantly than anything else. Guy who's smart. Like I mentioned before, he's got good length, he's got good feet, he can bend, he can move, he accelerates his feet on contact, all that kind of stuff. He loves ball. It shows as far as in your interview. It shows on tape how he finishes, how he plays. So those are kind of common stuff.
How would you grade the trio internal on the interior between Ted, Cordell, and Alex when they've been healthy? How do you feel like they've looked as a group?
How, I say that one more time?
Just the middle. Is that even a fair way to just that trio internally, the left guard, center, right guard? How do you feel like y'all have been on the interior in terms of the pass blocking?
Some good and some bad. I mean, I like a lot of things that we've been doing, but each guy's got an area to improve on.
How would you characterize the growth of Cordell? Speaking of a guy that's big, tall, tough, mentally.
He took a step forward last year and grew some. Like to see it do that even more this year, you know. So he's I think he finished the year going in the right direction. Maybe a little slower start than we had hoped.
Specifically in the pass blocking game, is that where his growth opportunity is probably the greatest?
I mean, I guess you could say that. I don't want to neglect his growth in the run game. I mean, he can still grow a lot in the run game as well, too. So, but yeah, I mean, him using his hands and working on a variety of punch or hand strikes has improved over the course of last year. And I think his biggest thing is still improving his foot speed. He's not naturally, fast twitch, if you will, with his foot quicks. He's got to improve or be dialed in his margin for error and everything else to improve how fast he does play with his feet. Is to make it that much more important with everything else. So he plays fast, not slower, in that area. So,
Coach, how you've been coaching this league a long time now, 15 years maybe, something like that. I mean,
you would know better than me.
I know. How is scouting the tackle position changed over that time with the way the college game has changed? Has it been tougher to project these guys?
The biggest change is they don't play as much and they come out a lot earlier, except for this COVID hiccup where guys are getting 6 years of eligibility and some of them are taking it. And you could argue the whole NIL is making them financially want to stay in. It's a whole other discussion. But the biggest change that I've seen is they come out younger. I mean, we've had guys at 20 and just turning 21. And like, you're going to, huh? I mean, it's amazing to me that it's just the experience, just what they've been able to experience and be taught in college is just a time on the job is not there what it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, but the fact that it's kind of a different game now, the college game is so much more different than the pro game. Does that make it tough? Is that one of the positions?
It depends on the schools, the offensive systems that they play in. I mean, they're throwing around as much as anybody in college that we do in the league now. But the simplistic thing of just being in a three-point stance, you can argue, is one thing that's kind of something a lot of these guys are never in anymore, very rarely in college. So that's something that's a little unique. But more and more teams in the NFL, we're just as much as we're in the gun, we're going to be in two-point stance often as well. So it's, you know, I'm trying to think of some other things that might be different that way.
But I mean, I guess it's intangibles and size and movement. I guess in the end, right? I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, the bottom line, who makes it in this league to me, it's the intangibles. It's not what you see on tape. It's having to get to know the kid. So I mean, I get 15 minutes with these guys officially here, then I get a couple 1 hour Zooms. I mean, it's everything you could get, whether it's resources from the school or who's coached them in the past or whatnot, to get what makes this kid tick. That's a differentiator. It's their intangibles by far. It's not what you see on a lot of guys who come here with all the talent in the world and they get drafted in the first 3 rounds because of it, but they drift away and they disappeared. And you get guys who were late round draft picks because they had the bare minimum talent, but they had all the other stuff off the charts, so they carve out a little career for themselves, whether it's backup role players or they develop into starters or whatever that is. Or some of those guys even are wearing golden jackets, you know.
There are guys who are on y'all's roster who have been drafted the last couple of years, but just haven't really been able to make an impact in the back of the room, even when guys have went down. Why do you think that's been the case, and they just haven't been able to kind of establish themselves, even in a role spot in certain situations?
Some of the young guys, you have names specific you're thinking about?
I mean, like Jackson Carman. I mean, you know, Deontay. You know, I don't know if Trace still on the roster. He is. Okay, thank you. So those guys, like, they just haven't been able to kind of really establish themselves even after being here for a few years.
What do you mean by establish themselves?
Like for example, if a guy goes down, like, you know, like Cody ended up becoming the next tackle, the next guy up. He was never signed in free agency.
Right.
Max Sharping's had a lot of good reps. He's a guy you got in free agency.
Right.
The guys you've drafted, however, have not been able to beat those other guys out for those spots.
Right. Those guys came in and beat them out.
Correct.
So those guys were backup players, and well, they outperformed them. I mean, what else is there to say? They played better.
Yeah. But is there something in common that just, like, in terms of the intangibles, are there any things that when you look back at maybe why they were beaten out? Is it just simply a performance thing, or are there other things that maybe haven't enabled them to be as successful as maybe y'all would have hoped?
I mean, they got beat out. I'm not sure what you're looking for.
I think what he's trying to ask is, have you guys looked back at the last couple of years in terms of drafting offensive linemen and found any reason why you haven't been able to get, other than Cordell, enough starting offensive linemen as opposed to having to go out and buy free agents to have the prominent roles in the offensive line?
I don't have an answer for you specific to that. They've had opportunities, and other guys have won the job. So I don't know what else to tell you.
How closely have you looked at this class? Are you deep into that at all, or?
I'm early in it. I've got obviously some interviews with guys that we're doing in the formals that I've watched more tape on than some of the other guys I haven't watched yet. So
I mean, it's a lot of talk about the tackle class being at the top. As deep. Is this as deep as you've seen as far as guys that are considered possible first-round picks at that position? There's been kind of such a scarcity, it seems like, in a lot of ways in recent years. People looking for those types of players.
Yeah, when Becton came out, there was 5 guys that all were considered. You can debate and argue who was ranked those 5 guys, and they were all worthy of an early first-round pick. I think this year seems to be kind of shaken out to a similar year. So that what was that, 2019, 20? Yeah. Whenever that was.
I don't know how the Jets worked. How involved were you in the drafting of Becton? I mean, I don't know if there are like personnel people who are like, we don't care about the coach's opinion, or that was a thing where, you know, that was a guy you're like, I want this guy.
Yeah, it's the process usually where I've been is the scouts have grades, the coaches have grades, you meet, you debate, you rank. We go down, re-rank them the way we feel strongly about it. Personnel ranks guys how they feel strongly about it, and all the decision makers take all that and come out with their final decision. That seems to be the status quo in the league. There might be some variances off of that. I don't know. I mean, I've worked at enough places to know, and visited with enough coaches to know that's kind of typically what works across the league. We seem to be no different.
What did you think of Orlando's first year here with the Bengals?
He had some up and down stuff. I think he'd tell you that as well. be great to. I know he's been in the off season, been at the facility this off season already working out. So I'm excited to do a little bit more with him this off season a little earlier. But he's a guy that I think has some got a lot of good football ahead of him, and I think he was maybe a little disappointed in how he came out. I think he's got a lot of ability, obviously, and maybe he can clean up a couple things, help him get a little bit cleaner on some of his technical stuff.
Was there an adjustment to the way you guys run things that he had not seen before in his previous times?
You have to ask him. It's a good question.
What is it? First off, apologies to Trey. I know the video is going to get posted, so I got to apologize to Trey Hill for forgetting he's on the roster. Secondly, what does it say about Orlando that he's already working out and wanting to kind of, and knowing that he probably wants some things to want to get better and he wants to start working on that almost, immediately before y'all start formal workouts?
I don't know. You tell me what does that say?
In your opinion, is that a good thing that a guy's getting after it?
I mean, yeah, don't you think? I mean, it's important to him. He wants to work on his craft and get better. I mean, it speaks volumes to me. I mean, you don't need to be an O-line coach to know that.
What makes a good leader on the offensive line like Ted?
His ability to connect with a bunch of different personalities, his ability to communicate. He does that obviously at his job as the center, but he's also a great communicator just amongst his teammates in the locker room and in the meeting room. A guy who could lead by example with his work ethic as well, not just vocally. So he kind of walks the walk and talks the talk, if you will. So a guy who's got a great experience and been around the block a few times. If that answers your question.
Well, those are the biggest characteristics you've seen in now your 2 seasons with him, going into a third?
Yeah, I mean, he's tremendous. He's one of the best I've been around as far as his communication skills at the line of scrimmage and in the meeting and knowing little nuance and adjustments and getting guys on the same page. He's excellent at that. And I know guys love playing with him, so he's fun to coach.
You talked about Cordell finishing the right way and in the right direction, but starting a little slower than you guys would have liked. What was the disconnect there? What was his struggles early on? And
I think he was overthinking and it was just making his feet play a lot slower than what he's capable of. I mean, I kind of busted his chops a little bit. What was the one? I don't know if it was a screen or something to the rookie running back. He was like the second fastest guy in the league. Well, who's running right behind him was Cordell. I'm like, where the hell's that been the first part of the season? Let's go. When you're not thinking, look at you. So just quit thinking and play fast. Overthinking. So I think that was kind of an opener for him there. But
I know he's still developing, but is he an example of what you're trying to find during the draft process? Is
Cordell?
Yeah,
he's got all those intangibles that you talk about. So he's wired the right way. He's going to grind. He's a worker. I mean, you're obviously looking for the most talented guy that's got that, right? That's the guys that you're going to have to spend and invest a high draft pick to get. That's what everyone's looking for. Everyone's looking for that. So, but yeah, no doubt he's the kind of guys we're looking for from a intangible standpoint for sure.
Can you get anything out of the interviews here? I mean, do these interviews, are they helpful to fit the?
Yeah, there's a couple questions you could ask them, and that might, open the door to explore other things. Or it's always fun to ask them, who do they think was the best player they played against, or the best defense, who was the worst, and hear their explanations for why. And then, if you haven't watched that game, you go back and watch that game, obviously. But and maybe just getting to learn a little bit more what makes them tick. It's kind of a good introduction to kind of help set up some of your Zoom calls and stuff or visits you may have in the future.
Do you have a favorite question?
I have a couple of favorite questions. I won't go into what those are, but they are compliant with NFL standards. I can tell you some stories from my playing days, but they're very compliant.
That were not compliant.
That were not compliant. Times have changed.
Do you have a favorite interview that you did here? A guy that just kind of blew you away?
No, nothing jumps out at me, to be honest with you. No, I don't have a name for you. Nothing to give you.